much further than we should. You're sick of the lies, sick of the lies. Who you gonna call when you get on the line? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Yeah! GLOBEBUSTERS! 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 If there ain't no curve, there ain't no ball. The globe religion about to fall. We're gonna open your eyes so you can see who you gonna call if you wanna be free. GLOBEBUSTERS! 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 Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Yeah! GLOBEBUSTERS! GLOBEBUSTERS! GLOBEBUSTERS!
And welcome everybody to GLOBEBUSTERS. We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. Simple as that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLOBEBUSTERS Tech. I'm your host, Zach Good Times for All, and today we'll be talking about crystalline knowledge. But before we get into it, we're going to say hello to everybody on the panel. And starting off today, I'm going to say hello to Cami Nodell. Cami, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Want to know, do you always trust your first initial feeling? A special knowledge holds true, bears believing. Oh, sorry, name that song crystalline knowledge. Fun topic tonight. Different than crystalline intelligence, different than just about anything. And thank you everybody for joining us.
All right. Yes, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Next up, we have Mr. Kyle Adams. Kyle, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, crystalline knowledge. This is going to be definitely an interesting show, and yeah, just ask lots of questions. I know I'm going.
Yeah, there's so many just mysteries just waiting to be unfolded with the whole topic here. So I'm really excited about this.
All right. Well, next up, we will introduce Miss Karen B. Karen, how are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
And what do you think about crystals and crystalline knowledge? I kind of have an idea what you think, but just let everybody else know. I mean, Karen and I have, we all have. Karen, Cami, myself, Ted. We've gone crystal hunting together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's actually it's more fun than fishing, I'll say. I'm just gonna say it.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I love crystals, obviously. I kind of got put on that path by Cami a couple years ago. I mean, I always liked crystals, like the crystals that we all know, but I kind of got into it on a different level after Cami came and stayed with me that one summer. I became obsessed with all the rocks in my yard and everything around me, and I started to realize, like, oh,
They're everywhere.
yeah, they're literally everywhere. So,
Awesome.
First question in the chat, can you eat them when you catch them? I'm writing, of course you can.
Salt is a
David Weiss,
crystal.
don't be ridiculous. We all know that David eats rocks.
All right, and last but definitely not least, Skylar from the Troubling Tribune channel. Skylar, how are we doing today?
Another day in paradise. Thanks for having me. I apologize for my voice being a little crackly, little under the weather, but still glad to be here. And this topic is pretty great. And the atheists and mainstream globe believers would have you believe that these are just pretty rocks to look at and have no other intrinsic value to them. But when you dive into a lot of the science behind it, you can see that there's obviously a lot more going on. So I'm excited to get into it.
All right. Yeah, me too. So without any further ado, I'm going to give it away to Miss Cami Nodell. Cami, were you muted?
I am muted. Thank you. I was talking all along. While Karen may have found her love for rocks, I stayed with her that magical summer, and I do. I have a love for rocks. I have a little bit more than a love for rocks. I have a technical knowledge of rocks that comes from my life. Previously, before I retired, my life was in the jewelry industry, and part of my job was determining what rocks were what when they brought little faceted goodies into the jewelry store. So I have a very technical take on rocks because I did separation and testing of them. But what that also taught me is that taught me a very technical vocabulary. And the one thing when when I talk to people about rocks, biggest complaint I get is that I lose them. I go too technical and too complicated, and it really isn't complicated. I can't help it. It was just the vocabulary and the trade terms that I used every day for over 30 years. So I can't. It's really hard, and learning is hard.
Well, yeah, it's just like so many topics. It's almost like you have to learn a different language. When you get into these specialty fields and you dive deep into them, of course, you're going to have to learn some new words. And when you work with it for like 30 years, like Cami did, those words become everyday. Just, when she uses them, she's not trying to sound smart. It's just
At all.
the words that she's always used for, 3 decades. So they're in her head.
And they were everyday working terms, and people I worked with also had the same vocabulary when we traded it. So it was nothing. I'm certainly not, but I lose people, and I don't mean to. And it's a beautiful, beautiful material that everybody that I've found that once they look at it, their eyes get wide and they see how much sense it makes. Karen has taken it a step further. She's taken a lot of the technical I know and she's combined it with healing. She's combined it in so many different ways that touch everyday life and has brought a lot even more to it. So I took a very technical niche. She's taken it so much further and I think presents much better than I did, to be perfectly honest, because she has the ability to uncomplicate the simple. And I realize it's what I do sometimes, and I apologize for it because it really is beautiful. And with that, I'd like to introduce Karen B and have her role. Welcome, no pressure on it all, Karen. No. No, it's not. It's a subject that she loves, she touches, and she understands down to her soul now, I believe, because again, she's not just reading things; she's out actually digging for the stones. Again, looking at it in different ways. I might have a little bit more technical, but she's getting really close to the hands-on that I have, and I love her and respect her so much for it. Welcome, Karen. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being part of the panel always, but thank you especially for tonight.
Well, no problem. You're welcome. I hope I do a good job.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
All right. Well, let me, I guess, share my screen so that you guys have something to look at while I'm flapping my gums.
Yeah, I used to think that crystals were woo-woo. I saw a lot of crystals when I went to like fish concerts or further festivals. There'd be a lot of people selling crystals, and I couldn't believe how much they were selling some of these crystals for. They were just small little chunks, and people were paying like $90. I was like, this is insane. But after, you know, living with Cami and hanging out with Karen and watching her streams, I'm starting to understand now. When you have certain crystals that they they resonate, they do. Well, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let Karen take over and let her go with this.
Yeah. Okay. So, Cami asked me to do, a basic Well, the very basics of crystal knowledge. So I'm going to give you like the very basics of what crystals are. So there's I'll start with the what you all are familiar with when you think of crystal, where you see this picture. Like if you say, "Oh, it's crystal," it's like this. It's the perfect crystal, right? It's clear, it's see-through, it's got the termination on top, but it looks like that. But that not all crystals look like that. But what is a crystal? A crystal is the scientific definition anyway is it's a mineral, right? It's a mineral that when it is in its purest form, it solidifies or grows into a crystal, which can be grow in any number of crystal systems. It depends on the mineral, but what happens is you end up with highly ordered, organized, a crystal lattice system at the molecular level. Right? So it's the way that they're ordered. It's these tiny little building blocks that know to grow in a very specific way.
Almost perfect.
Yes. Yes, almost perfect. Sometimes they do grow perfectly, and those are the ones you see in the museum, and those are the ones that you find pictures of.
But everything is crystal that's solid, correct?
Pretty much, yes. Yes, if you want to go down to the very simplest terms, so matter is a bit of is basically a solid. Anything that's crystalline is a bit of matter that is solid, right?
We'll take it a little bit further than that on the technical, that there are two types of solids, and all of solids can be characterized into two systems. One of them is crystalline and the other is glass. The difference between it, so you can have the same material. So if you took H2O and you made glass out of it, froze it out of conditions in that, and made a glass out of it, you would have an ice cube. A snowflake would be an example of that same material in crystalline form. Nature produces almost everything in crystalline form. In other words, it goes ahead and puts in the laddered structure and the organization. The few things out there in nature that are not crystal. So again, crystalline is the rule, and your few exceptions to the rule would be lava,
Yeah, I was always told
obsidian, where you have
Mhm.
your glass made from your fold gates when you have your lightning strikes and it makes the sand into glass. You do not have the structure in there. You have an unorganized of the elements, and you do get a glass, and that is basically too quick of a changeover between either gas or liquid and solid for it to fully organize.
I was always told in school that glass is a liquid, and so that's why when you look at really old windows, they're thicker on the bottom and thinner on the top because they're just kind of like slowly moving.
Nope, that's okay. What
No.
they kind of mean is they mean that glass would be a good way of describing the organization. When you look at gases in the atmosphere, they're very sparse, very unorganized. With liquids, you get more condensed, but not really a lot of organization to it. And in solids, you get the organizations. What glass really is they say it's a solid, like more of a liquid that's solid. Then again, the rest of nature, which the solid is organized. So the glass is what really has more liquid properties, meaning that the organization is like a liquid frozen into place, literally like an ice cube.
Which is very different from a salt crystal or anything, which is a lot more
Organization, metal, everything else.
organization and
Mm-hmm.
much more
Yeah.
integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what she's talking about, like the crystalline, the crystals that we see that we grow, their atoms organized in a very organized way, like on the left, right? They're in a very fixed pattern, like building blocks. And when it's glass and it's not an organized pattern, it looks like more on the right where it's just kind of all disorganized. It's all still together and it's still the same thing, but it's just not in an organized system, right? It's amorphous. Does that make sense?
Is the other way of thinking about that? It's just not forming a repeating pattern like the
Yes.
crystal solid is.
Exactly. But it's still a solid. right? So that would be the difference between a glass and a crystalline. So like if you were to look at like two rocks, like two black rocks, like if you look at like a piece of tumbled obsidian, which is glass, or a piece of tumbled tourmaline, right, which is not glass, it's a crystalline. The different they're both dark black, and you would not know the difference really. But if you look at them on a molecular level, you'll tell the difference because one will be in an organized pattern, one will not.
Now, can you
This-
look with just your eye and tell the difference between a crystal glass and just a glass?
What do you mean a crystal glass
Like
or
a
a glass?
glass made out of crystal. You know how
Oh, okay,
there's
like
certain,
wine glasses and that
yeah.
lead crystal and things like that. And no, that you would have to because you have a polish and a finish and everything, so you're not looking at any of the external growth qualities or things. You polished it away, so at that point you test. And you would look at the internal qualities, like again, you'll have small microscopic glass bubbles and different things in the glasses that you won't get. By the way, a lot of these things you won't get. There's, again, all of these different ways that you can separate things by it. Something interesting that was put in the chat was don't forget about liquid crystals. And if you think of LCD displays and liquid crystals, that's fabulous because it explained this should make sense to you. Now, all that is these are usually magnetic materials, and you get the liquid, if it's a magnetic liquid like a ferrofluid or that, you get it to line up the way that you want to. It will polarize itself and line up, and so you can make it display that way. So just like you see the ferrofluid making the spikes in that, when you hook it to the magnet, when you run like a little electrics or run little magnetics through this, again, you can get polarization and get the liquid to act organized like a solid crystal. So again, it will go just like you will say that almost all solid matters are crystalline, and your glasses would be your exception. That would be like a liquid frozen. Almost all liquids again are liquid, but you have the few, like again, where you're going to get the crystal. They don't have the word for it there, but where you have, like again, the liquid crystal, you get the crystalline properties of organization that you can get rarely in liquids. And again, there are special tricks with it, again, polarizing it usually magnetically, but let you go from there.
This is already sounding way better than anything I was taught in school.
Yeah, right.
Right. Reality, it matters.
Also, something that just kind of popped into my head and is that this structure or structuring pretty much determines if something's going to melt or if something's going to like catch fire and release stuff in like the smoke.
Well, that's going to depend on the material too.
Very good,
though.
Karen. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the
Because-
material. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, it just depends because there's different, okay, so basically crystals at their base are just minerals, right? So they're just a mineral. And over here, what is a mineral? So a mineral is a chemical element or compound that has more or less a constant composition, usually a solid with an ordered three-dimensional array of ions, molecules in its crystal structure. And and it's meets these specific requirements, but they're all over the scale as far as like hardness, softness, what their property is, if they're refractive, or
if they're going to melt or burn even.
Yeah, if they're going to melt, if they're going to burn, how hot it has to be before it will melt, what happens when it melts.
So Skylar, a good example of this would be is all metals, because being solid, they are crystalline and they have a very organized structure. So gold, for instance, when you melt gold, you turn it into a liquid. It's in a liquid state, it loses its organization, but as soon as it solidifies, it retakes it instantly, just like Zach has done bismuth, and it sees how quickly even the external of bismuth will form the crystal on it. Metals organize themselves in milliseconds, tiny parts of milliseconds. It is one of the fastest, or as far as I know it, again, I don't know what might organize faster, but I know one of the hardest things in science, or one of the most expensive things to do, is make a metal glass, meaning like making it where you solidified it so quickly it does not get its perfect lattice to it, because as soon as you're able to do that, you get all kinds of wonderful new properties out of it. For instance, you can take a little ball bearing and bounce it on a piece of metal, and it bounces I think like 40 or 50 times longer than it would if it was unorganized. But the fact that it does it in milliseconds, them trying to keep it in that, get it to turn over fast enough where you lose the organization, they have a hard time doing it that quick. That's how quickly it happens. They say things form over millions and millions and millions of years, but in reality, we have a hard time growing metals not in crystal form because it happens so quickly, so very quickly. And yes, rocks grow. All metals grow. Karen, you're on.
Okay. So where did I leave off? Okay, so we're talking about crystal versus amorphous. Okay, so when these things form, and these things are all formed usually naturally, right, through a geological process. It's just some things happening within the earth, usually, where these things are able to grow. And typically, what it takes to make them grow is to have a whole bunch. First of all, a highly concentrated amount of whatever this mineral is, and then it also has to be like in a slurry. It has to be able to move around. It has to be, activated. This is why I kind of feel like water is sort of like it's like the mother liquid crystal. Like it makes everything do whatever it needs to do. Plants grow with water, crystals grow with water. So they start in like a super saturated slurry. And, as the earth, I don't know if the water comes from below or maybe it comes from down from like the deluge of water over time going down through the earth and rinsing those minerals together. And sort of they just over time grow into these beautiful things that we find, deep in the ground, sometimes on the surface of the ground, all over the ground everywhere, pretty much.
So if we want to get out and go crystal hunting, we want to go check out like riverbeds.
Yeah. Yeah, rivers, places where there's a lot of where there's lots of river rock and stuff, or like a lot of, where water's, coming down into the river through the mountains and stuff, like the Appalachian Mountains and stuff, because it rains so much here. It is so humid and so moist here, and there's just so much. I think that's why there's just such a high mineral content here. I mean, there's mines everywhere. It's so easy to go out and just find giant chunks of crystalline, like, quartz rock all over the place. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, we have huge quartz veins running through the rocks in the creek behind our house because there's constantly water running over them and through them. You can see the huge 4 or 5 inch thick, and we don't know how deep they go in, but they're just huge blocks of quartz that run through these rocks. It's amazing.
People think of petrification, and they think of petrification as a tree like drying out and becoming a stone because it became dehydrated. This is the exact opposite of how it happens in nature. In nature, some of the live trees in Yellowstone are actually fossilizing under the water while they're still producing green leaves. If you go around a riverbed and check your tree roots and your different things around the water, or Zach will tell you about some of the logs that get thrown in the river. This happened in a wet environment, not a dry environment. It's the opposite to it. One thing that will probably happen is it's probably able to hold its shape because it's probably a very still area, that like a little pocket of stillness that it was able to survive in.
Right. So whenever like a tree gets petrified or fossilized, it's usually because the tree is in the bottom of a riverbed, or it ended up in the bottom of a lake or something like that. And then there can't be any oxygen, right? It gets robbed of all oxygen, and then it ends up at the bottom of this water, where there's all kinds of earth and dirt, which is what is earth. Earth is just all the minerals, right? Every mineral, all ground up, all the organic stuff, everything being broken down back to its base level. And then you mix that with water and it gives it, time. And then if it's laying at the bottom of the water, that's got that pressure and that water, and then it's just sitting there, and then it just starts to grow. All the minerals start to form. Like goes to like. They just start to do whatever they do, right? They just start to form. and they start to replace the organic mineral of the tree, and then you have a petrified tree.
Exactly. As the tree breaks down, the recipe, the ingredients of it are released and are open to reform something new in it. So again, this didn't happen a million years ago or anything. This is happening every day around you. That's why they find all of the impossible fossils, because things are fossilizing every day around you. Rocks are growing every day around you.
It's a quick reminder that you can't get any kind of fossils without a flood.
No, you're that's true. I always say that I think a lot of the stuff that people find, a lot of these, petrified
Mhm.
trees, like the petrified forest in Arizona, is like a pretty good example of probably something that could have happened during the flood.
I agree with that. I think it would make perfect sense on watching how things form in reality and grow that type of condition. And again, to get a huge grouping like it. So
And
again, taking you back. Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say there are places on Earth, there's multiple places I'm starting to find now. One of the oldest attractions in England, it said, was one of these. But here's one real quick. I'm just going to steal the screen, Karen.
Hmm.
This water turns everything to stone. They just hang it underneath this running water here, and it turns all this stuff
Oh, it
into stone.
calcifies.
Yeah.
That water's just got a super, super high calcium content.
Wow.
I've seen where they like take stuff and they put stuff in a calcium bath and they just run it over and you can calcify things. So yeah, that if you have high mineral content water like that, where it has that's exactly because that's how things form in the caves, right? The water's dripping, the highly, mineralized water is dripping in the caves.
That's
And
in
as the water drips, it just leaves that remnants of the mineral. And it forms really fast. Like Cami says, like those, if you think about it, if you were able to look at it up close while it was happening on a microscopic scale, there would be like thousands and thousands of little calcite minerals just clinging onto that stuff as the water runs over it, right? And then over time, it just gets built up.
I'd venture to say they probably got like 100 parts per million of hardness. That's like literally what people deal with in their pipes, just on a
Oh yeah,
degree.
yeah. You can like cut open old pipes and it'll be like agatized inside the old pipe. I mean, this is like what Cami was talking about, like with impossible fossils and stuff. Like this stuff doesn't take millions of years, especially
Okay.
if you have lots and lots of water.
Okay, vocabulary. Lesson number 1 on Cami's vocabulary. Everybody take it out. Take notes. Really easy. Epigenic just means that it's new growth on top of the old, on top of
There you
something
go.
old.
Epigenic.
Epigenic, something new. So you have a piece of quartz and something, calcium or something drips on top of it and forms something else on top of it. It's epigenic growth. I don't know how, if everything formed billions of years ago, we can have so much epigenic growth. And it's obviously happening all around us. But epigenic, don't be scared of the word. It just simply means, like, again, on top of something else, on top
It
of
kind of
another
sounds like
host.
epidermis,
Hmm.
like a skin, and so it's kind of the way I'm remembering it.
I believe epigenic is going to carry over to the medical and to some of the other places as well, meaning like probably I imagine in medical it's going to be like maybe a different tumor on top of one tumor or something else. It would be a secondary growth, or it would be so epigenic entomology is something on top of.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so
One
we'll
way to
be
remember it,
interrupted when
like a
we hear
skin.
new words or see things for things. We're going to be adding things to it, see where they put it other places, but yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, where were we?
We're going to be going all over the place with this curve. It's so easy to do. This is what
I know,
we're learning,
totally.
but we are all learning new things is what the chat is getting out of this. So keep going.
Right.
I want to get
right.
fossilized when I die. I keep thinking about that. It's like, put my body there when I'm dead. That'd be cool.
That's a whole wonderful, that would be a sideshow that I wouldn't mind doing. If you look at what they're trying to maybe achieve with mummification, and if you look at the Catholic Church and something called beautification, that if you turn to stone, you're granted sainthood, becoming more beautiful and a stone. Could they, with the mummies, been trying to cheat that or that. I don't know. It's an interesting topic all to itself, Kyle. But again, completely off topic here. I want to turn
Sorry,
to
it's
stone
really
too.
cool.
No, I think it was in the chat too. But yeah, I actually want to be buried in a natural green burial, and I'd like to crystallize. But that's just me, and I want to live with the rocks.
Hmm.
Okay, I've got Karen entirely off topic now.
Yeah, I don't remember what I was talking about, but anyway, does anybody want to kickstart it again?
You're talking about epigenic, which
Okay,
is
well,
different
yeah,
from
yeah,
epidemic. It's epigenic, which
right.
is
Okay,
about the
so it's
skin.
always they're always forming. So like if you take a piece of quartz, out of the river, you could probably put it back in there and it would probably just start growing again. You know. It's kind of weird like how you can grind the material up, right? And then it'll just, if you put it back into the right conditions, it'll just start growing back to what it was before. It's like it's it's weird, Cami, because earlier I was outside and I was picking a bunch of I was picking weeds out of the garden again, and I was sitting there with all the rocks, and I was thinking it's like yeah, they grow just like they're alive. I'm like, but they're not alive like plants are alive. And then I kind of heard in my head, well, we're alive, but we're also immortal. Like they were telling me that they were immortal. Like
Yeah.
the you know what I mean? Like
Right.
they don't ever go away. You can break it down over and over and over again and just keep rebuilding with the basic building blocks that we have here in this realm, and that's what crystals are.
The building blocks. That's exactly right. That's beautiful, Karen. And right. And
Wow,
right.
that's an interesting way to look at things. Yeah, that's what immortality looks like.
Exactly, right? And they can be broken down, and they're also even maybe could even be considered shapeshifters, because if you mix them with other minerals, sometimes they turn into something else, you know?
Alchemy and
Yeah,
chemistry, they indeed
yeah.
do.
Yeah, and it's all just built into what it is. It's intrinsic. Everything they do is just it's what they're meant to do. No human programs them to do whatever they do, right? They just do it. It's
If
pretty
you
cool.
really stop and look at it, and very few people do, but if you really stop and remember and think about it, again, everything that we make and everything that we have is derived from nature. We make it from nature. We do it by looking at what properties the inherent base material has, how we can combine them, melt them, and do different things to make them useful for us. But the properties were there, and we learn, we find them, and now that we understand and can use them, what they do is they compartmentalize us and they take us away from that knowledge. But that special knowledge, the alchemy and the knowledge, and that this is the basic knowledge. This is chemistry, crystals, and growth, and the earth growing. This is everything about everything. If you really break it down into it and think very deeply about it, it is all of your chemistry, it is all of your alchemy, it is, in the end, we all become, well, dust, we come from dust, and that's where we shall return. And again, your spark of life is the energy, but
Yeah.
yeah, deep, very deep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool once you think about it, and like of course the crystalline nature of even our own bodies. Like if you want to get into liquid crystal, of course there's liquid crystal within us. Even in the where it says what is a mineral, there's only one thing or one crystal, one mineral that's considered a crystal that is not that's liquid, and that's mercury, and then also water. But from conversations that I've had with Ben, like mercury and water are actually very similar. It's kind of trippy. Because mercury is like a carrier, right? Like they use it to dissolve other metals, and that sort of thing. And water also can dissolve pretty much, a lot of minerals, with enough time. and it's also a carrier. It's really kind of trippy. So, like, if you want to talk about the two base liquid crystals, that would be mercury and water, basically.
Yeah, we're
I
going to
keep
have to do a whole show on mercury itself.
Yeah,
It's really amazing. We've been taught here in the West how dangerous and poisonous it is, but in reality, it's all around us. It's in our bodies. It's just like water. If you add a bunch of poison to water, then yeah, it's bad for you. But raw natural mercury is it's a it's around you everywhere. It's even in your body. And it's not, I mean, it's a part of this place. It's not bad for us. We need it.
right. Exactly. What? Yeah. Um,
So real quick, I just want to show something. I
mhm.
found that this is a 72-hour time lapse, just showing how quickly a crystal can grow. So he's mixing in the solution. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe a seeding. I'm not sure what that is. They don't really say
That's just food coloring.
to show. Okay.
So that yeah, because they'll do it with color to make the crystal easier to see.
And look at that down there. How this is just over 72 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a pretty cool video.
So in just 3 days, you can grow a crystal that size. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, you could do it with like borax. There's a few different pretty easy chemicals, not chemicals, but stuff that it's not even toxic, and you can mix it in with water and you just let it sit there, give it some time, and it'll grow.
When I was a little girl, we still had chemistry sets where you could get the alum and the different things from this. And again, you put it on a microscope slide, put it on a hot plate, and you can watch these growing under a microscope. So that's absolutely beautiful. It happens when the ingredients and the conditions are right. It happens for you. It doesn't know how not to happen.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I found another one, but I'm not sure. It doesn't say how long the time lapse is.
I
Tripod
keep
roll. There we
thinking
go.
about crystals and water and how water is used to help build crystals, but it also kind of is a part of it can strip them down too. And I'm thinking of sea glass. If you've ever seen sea glass before, where it ends up grinding up a bunch of like glass bottles on the seashore and turning it into pebbles.
Well, that's not the water per se, it's the action of the water on the sand and it hitting the bottom in the sand and tumbling over and over again. And so you can do the same thing with the tumbler, which you run water into. But yeah, the water is naturally a carrier. I mean, water, think about it, would be natural carrier for like ingredients and ways to get together and begin it. And it does. Things definitely crystallize a lot around water. It's not the only place. Again, you could have some underground things in that, but around water, you see it happening all of the time. And that's
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Loving this sack.
These were
Yeah,
5 days right here.
Yeah, this is a good video. I've shown this one too. I love this stuff.
Just beautiful.
Looks
And
like
this
it's
is
turning into
happening around
ice.
us everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find this. Oh, I know where I can find it. Maybe.
Is this ice forming or not?
I'm not sure.
That looked like rutile.
Mm-hmm.
Rutile?
Rutile.
I don't know what that is.
It's a mineral that grows in needles like that.
Oh.
Isn't it amazing how it just absorbs all that liquid and turns it into that?
Well, yeah, it's not really absorbing the liquid though. It's the water evaporating off,
Evaporating, yeah.
and then the mineral that's left is growing into those crystals as the water evaporates away.
This is kind of like what we do in alchemy. You separate all the salts from the oils and from the alcohol, and you purify them. And one of the things is they say the salt of a plant is pretty much the material that you have left over. So you put your alcohol in the jar, and then you put your plant matter in there. And then when you go to separate it, you actually pull that plant matter out and you burn it. You're cleansing it. You're burning away all the impurities, and all you want left is white ash.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your crystals. Those are your salts. The plant,
Mm-hmm.
every plant is made up of salts that pretty much build a crystalline structure for it to grow into.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mineral is what's gonna give anything its rigidity, right? I mean, if you
Hmm.
think about it, the mineral forming is gonna give it those different levels of rigidity and elasticity. Like what Cami was talking about with the different types of crystal, how she said there's crystalline glass, it's like crystalline and amorphous. There's polycrystalline too, where it's like a solid material, but it's still pliable, it bends, right? So that would be sort of like in between.
Yeah. Just amazing.
So we're thinking that we have a new person joining the show asking, is crystalline anything like organite? Well, organite is probably crystalline.
Organite is made from crystals and metals, so yeah, organite contains crystalline material.
But crystalline material does describe almost every solid and not just organite.
Right. Right. Organite is that specific stuff where it's like they make it what is that? It's like an energy, it's supposed to be like a high energy or something, like people try to use it for cloud busting, or I kind of forget what people use it for.
Yeah.
Something like
I
that.
think, what's his name? Chris Pontius. He was making those,
Mm-hmm.
taking organite crystals and building them into pyramid shapes.
Right.
And he would run a current through it. And yeah, we didn't have any clouds there to see it done the day we were there visiting him. Would have been neat to see it actually. I think he did turn it on though, just for a while. I didn't really feel anything different in the air, but yeah, I've heard mixed results. Some people, when you go and it's just like anything, when you go and do researches on a topic, when you're trying to find truth, you really have to do your due diligence, because it seems like for every truth out there, there is somebody saying the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's that's just how it is. You're going to have this with just about every field. When a truth is being hidden, especially when it's being hidden, you're going to find a lot of people, towing the line. And most of it's because they don't know any better. I mean, really, we've seen it time and again with all these different, really highly educated people that have had conversations about even the shape of the earth. And they've shown time and again that they really don't know their own models and their own physics and how it actually works. They know a lot of the equations, and they'll, spout off some big equation, but if you only know the equation, then you really don't know anything. So it's you have to be very picky about who you go and find your information from when you're searching for truth that's being hidden like this. So always keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I found this one. These are little
Little
salt.
bubbles.
Yeah, and you can see as the liquid is evaporating,
Mm-hmm.
it creates this, but then it starts creating these little legs underneath it. Yeah, this is from MIT.
Crazy.
Isn't that? They
It's
build up,
salt?
yeah, and they build up on these little spikes as the water is evaporating away. That's where the last of the water comes out, they say.
Salt pillars.
Salt pillars, right?
Yep.
Exactly. That's crazy, Zach.
Yeah.
Amazing. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's actually kind of the stuff like whenever they talk about like the pillars of the earth, that's what I imagine because if you've ever seen those videos
Whoa.
where the cave guys like rappel deep, they find like a little hole in the ground in the mountains and they go inside of it and it turns into a big massive cave and you just see just these big giant, pillars of whatever it is, mineral, salt, calcite, whatever, just huge giant pieces, so
The
when I think
selenite
about,
caves, yeah.
yeah, whenever I think about pillars of the earth, I'm like there just got to be giant crystals because the crystals even grow in, a column in like a columnar way, like they'll grow in big long, in a pillar shape, you know
And it says
so
they're highly repeatable and come in a variety of shapes. So
mhm.
it's not like they all come out different. So what they're claiming is that you'll see a lot of these same shapes over and over and over again, to where they've actually named them
The droid.
the droid.
That's really interesting though.
It does look like something from Star Wars.
And tell me that that's not intelligently being designed when something is constantly being recreated in certain
Yeah,
ways.
right, if it keeps doing it the same way over and over and over. Yeah.
But yeah, just like a drop of salt water, probably right there. Wow. Is that a droid? Look, it starts growing more. Wow.
Kind of reminds me of a mushroom.
I want
Yeah,
to do this. It can't be that hard under a microscope, most likely. Wow, look at that. The water moving through it.
like it's creating little tubes.
And some of these salt pillars are enormous. I mean,
Did you see on
we
that
have
last one?
underground bunkers and
Mm,
caves that are these
mm.
salt pillars. I'm sorry, Camera Joe.
Oh, I was just noticing how some of your salt pillars were working like a straw, the tubes that were drawing the water and that through it, and working like a vortex on it that you had showing. Again, you could see the energy vortexing through there and drawing the liquids through.
Yeah, I could see how if you had like a giant version of that, you could have water going down one and up another and
Pillars, to me, pillars and dipoles have always been almost, you see a pillar, you see the way that they grow in crystals, and you use the word dipole, which is just basically an organized magnet, and that pillars and dipoles to me again are explaining that alignment, that polar alignment, again, the pillar. You see it, we are every obelisk in that. When you see obelisks and they were saying they are penises, I don't know, I think obelisks look much more like crystals, and if you pull your crystals terminations up and your pillars, it could be, again, we could just be distracting and putting sex on everything, where though it's on a lot of things, it really, I think we go a little bit crazy on that layer on it with looking at the occult symbology and that. To me, a pillar, a obelisk, and that is
It is like
symbolizing
a
growth
crystal
in
shape.
nature. Yes, it's exactly like it's how it organizes and how it grows in nature. If you look at it in its purest form.
I
Again,
wonder how it
these shapes are,
resonates.
sacred geometry is the purest form of the way crystals form. If you see them growing under ideal conditions, these are what they look like. I see
mhm.
Karen's got the screen and I'll be quiet. Lovely.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
these are the crystal habits. These are all the basic forms that crystals will grow in some variation of this, different combinations of it, but this is basically what you'll find. And you see it's got prismatic and dipyramid prismatic where it terminates to a point on top, prismatic where it terminates to flat, just a flat surface on the top, perfect cubes, um, pyramids, all of it. It's pretty awesome.
I wonder how they resonate, like how they affect sound and things.
Um,
Sorry, I'm still thinking about the obelisks.
oh,
It would depend on the material itself and what frequency it would vibrate towards too. And that, I mean, you would have to take not only the shape but the material and the everything into consideration on it, and it would certainly be a factor.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering what they make them all out of, and yeah, no, I'm really curious now. It's not just a structure, but it's actually a material that it's made out of, and there's a lot more to it than just the way it looks.
Yeah. Well, and they make those obelisks out of granite, which is crystal. Granite is usually made of like three or more different crystal systems
Quartz,
together.
mica, feldspar.
Right, quartz, mica, feldspar, exactly. So, but those are all crystal systems. So essentially they are big. They are carved from crystal.
What's happening with granite is you have three crystal habits that are differently. The three things are growing in the same area at the same time, and as they run into each other, they can't grow further. So you have the three of them all crystallizing. So if you look at granite and look at it closely, you'll see it's a mixture of a whole bunch of different mixtures, and though you will have some other things in it, it's primarily feldspar, mica, and quartz.
So if you get one chunk that's growing faster than another chunk, that's going to cause it to fracture, right?
You can, if you have one area of things that can grow into another and pop, you can get some fracturing of things around it. If you have something like a material that's more abundant, so let's say like within your materials, one of the habits is a stronger material. If it pushes against it, it can win, or it will win going against something weaker. Just think about nature as things grow up against each other. I mean, you're thinking big fractures, but I mean, it's more or less on granite.
So this whole kind of chaos inside the granite, having multiple structures in there, is that going to make it stronger or weaker? Like I'm thinking the more unified the structure is, the stronger it's going to be, right?
Okay, you have two words that get confused with people when talking about minerals. There's two very, very special words. There's hardness and there's toughness. So you're using strongness to describe it, and strongness is not a technical word. Hardness, everybody knows that diamond is like the hardest substance. That pertains to if you take another object and try to scratch it. What will scratch each other? That is all it has to do with is its scratch ability. So even though a diamond has the best hardness out there, we've seen many diamonds completely demolished because people test them by taking hammers to it. Diamonds have perfect cleavage. So if you don't even have to hit it hard. If you hit right on a cleavage plane, you can cleave, the stone into or make a good crack in it. And it has, again, multiple angles where it can. So it can fracture. So jade actually is one of your toughest stones. Granite is fairly tough. It does not have a cleavage plane to grow against, and yet none of the materials particularly hard, so you'll have scratchability to it. So it's got a good toughness, but not a good hardness, or not an excellent hardness. So how does that make it strong? Kyle, I don't know. Your question merged on the properties. So you have two different things again going on with it.
Breakable. It's about breakability. Is it more secure than
it's tough.
compared to like a diamond, for example? A diamond, you'd think it's
No, but it would not. A diamond would probably is going to be overall tougher unless you hit again, diamond, because it has perfect cleavage. If you hit with a sharp wrap on just a cleavage angle, you can make a perfectly clean break on a diamond, like much easier than you'd be able to make any type of clean break in granite without a saw.
Yeah.
We're off topic here, but yeah.
I'm going to share real quick, Karen. I'll give
Okay.
you the screen back in a second. I just want to show you how big some of these salt domes can get. This one is in Romania, I believe, and they say it's 208 meters deep. So that's over 600 feet that this salt dome grew. But
Really?
look how wide this place is. They're going to turn the corner here, and it's just enormous. And this is all salt that they pulled out of here. Just huge. all crystalline. This size. That's just crazy to me.
So wait, the walls are salt? Like it's a salt mine?
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
salt
okay.
mine. The
Okay.
largest salt mine in Europe.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, just big giant chunks of salt here
Is that
everywhere.
the one where you can go on tours in it and stuff?
Yes, yeah.
Ah, that would be so awesome to go there.
Yeah, the Slanik Prahova. I probably did that no justice. Sorry.
Yeah, so like you're pointing out, these huge masses sometimes of these large deposits of mineral like this, like salt, right,
Look.
are all over the plain, like um and like if you go to Carrara, Italy, there's a large mass deposit of marble there. The mountains are marble, so like if you go there, you can see that where they're carving into side of the mountain, harvesting marble from the mountain to make stuff from marble. And it looks like the mountain is like Snow White. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I found some pictures of some mountains in Iran where it just looked like the whole top of the mountain is just someone took giant salt shaker and just covered it. It's just a huge pile of white
Yeah,
salt on top of the mountain.
right. Right. And they have like the multicolored like salt layers. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Um yeah, salt is the cube. It grows like a cube.
And these are all over the place. Here's one in the United States. This is Kansas City salt mine. Yeah, so
Right?
they're not just in, near the ocean. Kansas City is nowhere near the ocean.
Right, exactly.
These happen all over the place. But yeah, look at all that. Just salt. Crazy how big some of these things are.
Yeah. So anyway, the all of our land masses are made from crystalline material, right? Who knows what's going on under there? But
Oh, I know.
but with all the properties that all these different minerals have, and all of the, almost infinite combinations you can make with all of the different minerals that we have, and then you add temperature as a coefficient, heating them up, cooling them down, even at different rates. And you get like all of these different things that you can make, these different, materials. Um, so it's really kind of fascinating once you start getting into it. And yeah, exactly. That's why I feel like that's why they leave this out, like crystals, electricity, magnetism, like all three of these things are like the main, driving force between most of technology today. And like they don't teach you anything about this stuff in basic education, like at
Because they
all.
want you to be a factory worker.
Right, they
And
want you to
factory
be a
workers don't
factory
even know that
worker.
stuff.
Exactly. You don't need to know the properties of minerals and how they interact with each other and like all the really cool stuff. The stuff that, would seem like magic, you know?
Yeah, like this mountainside Kyle found in Peru. Tell me that doesn't look like magic.
Yeah, totally.
And that's salt, Kyle?
Yes, it
I don't
is.
know. I don't know.
No, that I recognize that one as one of the salt. I believe one of the salt mountains in Peru. There's some beautiful ones. Also in the Middle
Little
East.
tiny people down there. That's
This
crazy.
reminds me of the 7-color sands.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And each one of those colors is because the salt is carrying a different mineral concentrated in that color.
Oh, it's just beautiful.
So while we're doing this, a lot of us are older. Again, and unless you have young kids or start going in and looking into it, what scares me right now is going through is like, again, when I went to school, we had chemistry strats and I grew crystals and did things a little bit. And then I went into my own little world that specialized in them. And I came out of it and I looked around the world. And one of the things that's changed is I looked in even National Geographic was selling crystal growing kits that were molds that you molded the crystals into shapes like ice cubes.
Oof.
This is National Geographic.
It's terrible.
They're telling their
Terrible.
children, instead of going out looking how things grow or growing and seeing how things work in nature, they're giving kits to literally. One of your other differences between a glass and a solid would be a neat way to distinguish it, and so that will tell you with like again your lava, and that is solids take their own shape. They grow, and they grow from themselves. Where glass is that when they change over, they take the shape of the container. So whatever they land on is how they flow. That's where they freeze into place. So again, making a glass and calling it a crystal, National Geographic. My heart was broken. You see that the chemistry sets are taken away. We're not taught how anything works anymore. Instead, we're presented with a finished product and microcosms, and we have no clue how the world works anymore. And again, you want to see how they're hiding flat Earth. It's because they're hiding how the world works. It's almost more important than the way that they hide flat Earth, because even if because again, I'm watching programs that start right now with the headers, nothing about the what if nothing about the world was what they told you it was. We're beginning to learn that. So it almost seems like in media these things are coming out. I don't know if I'm the only one noticing it, but even if you don't look at how things work and you learn that it's flat, you tend to still go away from everything, go into simulations, go into making more science and fiction in that, instead of looking at what was created, how it was created, and what really all the magic there is already built into it to work with. Too much magic, more than we ever could even now figure out how to use. And yet we're going to say that, like, oh, we're living inside of a computer simulation. What are we simulating? What are we doing? What, or we're doing, again, we make up these fantasy, what I would call fantasy answers. So to me, it's almost understanding how it works is a huge key to flat Earth, more than anybody gives it credit for, I think. Because the secret to flat Earth and why they're hiding it is because of how it works and the knowledge, the crystalline knowledge embedded into it. So my opinion, thank you for listening. But I think it's really true.
Cami, don't
And
you know that the way the crystals grow and present themselves is simply a programming of the simulation?
it's simulating what? What is it? In other words, you simulate. I use simulate as a word used in my industry. You make a diamond simulate. In other words, you take a glass, you put it in a ring so you can fool somebody, and it simulates the diamond. It's pretending to be the diamond. What are we simulating?
It's a very good question.
Yeah, that was always my question with the simulation, because a simulate is like when you simulate something else. Well, what are we simulating? Or it's something that's inside of a simulated in a computer.
In a computer.
And I just don't believe we're living in a computer.
The computer made out of what parts? In other words, how did they make the computer? Because right now I know how we make computers is we refine and we make the plastics and we draw the wires and we do the things. All of these things happen in nature. These properties already existed, and we very, very rudimentally and roughly put them together. I mean, our technology, we call it great because we have egos. But if you look at some of the stuff built in the past, I don't think it's all that great. If you look at, again, the history and that, I think it's pretty much a neat little deception to get us to sit in a little room and not look what's going on. I don't think it's very smart at all.
This picture right here clearly looks like there's some rendering problems in the cave. I'm just messing with. I'm just having. I'm not big on simulation theory, but I know how some of the tenets go. So I was curious on how you would address that.
Yeah. I just don't. I think people use simulation as a way to understand the creation in human terms, I guess. Like, I feel like that's just how humans are able to sort of identify, like, sympathize or not, what am I trying to say? Like they're trying to how to understand what the creation is, like in your humanist, your simple human terms, right? Because I don't really think we
Rudimentary.
could, very rudimentary, right? Like I don't think we could really understand the creation fully. You know, I think we're all just doing our best, but to understand what it is and what it is to make this place and the, you know, whatever the being the that was that created this place, it is so beautifully complex and simple at the same time. It's amazing. And I don't think it's inside of a computer. I don't think that it is the remnants of the lost civilization that mined this place and we're living in the leftovers. I don't think it's a prison. You know, I don't think it's any of those things. I think it is like an amazing, beautiful place that we just haven't been given the chance to fully understand yet.
And I've been seeing a lot of these places, these old salt mines, are being turned into therapy centers.
Oh yeah,
A
I
tourist
believe it.
destination and therapy center. Look at that. Just, it almost looks like wood, doesn't it? Like a wood, like
Mm-hmm.
like you sliced a tree in half there. And this one up here is also a therapy center. Look at that. They're going to turn it into one. Look at those walls.
That is cool.
I think
So cool.
All rock.
anything that puts you into a state of awe can necessarily qualify as therapy.
13, almost 1,400 feet underground.
I agree with that, Kyle. As far as good therapy, again, the nature and to see the beauty and be overcome by it.
These mines are all over the earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also giant, you know, like these selenite caves. These ones you can't really go to because it's not really
It's like
visitor friendly.
140 degrees or something like that down there.
Yeah, you have to wear a suit and then you can't be down there for more than like a few hours. It's just not
A tourist destination.
yeah, it's not the most pleasant thing to go see, but it is cool to look at pictures of it. It's like the Fortress of Solitude
Yeah.
down there.
Bring a hammer and chisel and cash out.
Yeah, well, it's selenite. I mean, selenite is, you know, it's all over. It's pretty plentiful mineral. It's not like one of your more expensive ones. It's actually pretty soft too. Selenite is one of the softer minerals. Um, but it is a really cool thing. But you can go inside caves like this of celestite too. I think there was a giant celestite cave somewhere in the northeast that you can go to. You know, they've got big, you know, quartz caves and stuff like this too. So
Is
they
it
find these big
radioactive or
things,
something?
quartz underground. Some minerals are radioactive, yeah.
Especially the green
I was
ones. Fun fact,
wondering why you
before
couldn't be there for very long.
Oh, because of the temperature, Kyle, it's really hot, and again, the 140 degrees in the suit, and even the disruption to it down there. Again, they don't want a lot of disruption down there. And only 2 on the Mohs scale of hardness. Selenite is a very soft material that can be scratched by a fingernail.
Mm-hmm.
A question that I had about
So,
crystalline structures versus, you know, other matter would be, what do you guys think actually causes the difference in how the molecules structure themselves?
Wait, say
That
that again. I'm sorry.
I said, what do you guys think actually causes these different structures to have different arrangements of molecules to give them these different properties?
well, that's Karen. Do you want to do that one, or do you want me to try?
You can go ahead.
Okay, basically it's like baking a cake, is my easiest way of putting it. I don't know if you would say what, in other words, I can observe what's happening, but when certain ingredients get together, the conditions are right and the temperature is right, and temperature is usually a huge catalyst in this. So again, the ingredients being right, present in the presence of a correct temperature and growing conditions and everything right, they have no choice but to grow. So as soon as you have different elements, they'll do it into the different habits. The different habits think of the different habits as the way I think of it. I'm going to just express it out the way I think of it. And this is, again, my opinion, not a right or a wrong thing. I think of, instead of atoms, I think of these pluses and minuses as charge potential, if that makes sense. So when you draw the atoms, I see them areas, I see them as energy lines instead of the way they draw them. And every time I see a plus or a minus, I see, again, going from high to low pressure. So I see them as grid lines of the charge potential, right? And they'll show like the different elements line up. The building blocks that they make are different shapes. And so if you think about like taking sugar cubes and pushing them together and making a pyramid out of it, or taking little dodecahedrons, and you can like line these things up into the pyramid shape, they're going to have different angles and that they can cut along and organize, but it's the ingredients themselves and the way the charge potentials, plus and minuses, that they gather together with the ingredients, and other ones will not attract each other. Again, they'll repel and will go into different arrangements. So again, as they get together, they make these different bond arrangements. And then like in the case of like something like granite, where you have the things gathering that have gotten different base lattice shapes, they grow into each other and stop. Each one will grow into each other and stop and use up what it has there in this space. But the base building blocks are, again, the best way I can think of doing it is based on the charge potential, or what they would call the atomic shape of the molecule that you're starting with.
Well, it's interesting you brought that up. I was just thinking of why those salt crystals we saw always grew straight down. It didn't matter if it fell over, they started again. They never grew out the top, up, or off the sides. All of those crystals.
They're not going to terminate like your quartz or that. Is that what you mean?
No, when we were watching the salt water.
Uh-huh. Okay, because salt goes into cubic structure.
Well, all the pillars that were coming off of it were growing straight down to make it have legs, like it was standing up.
And it was making the legs back and forth with ground. Did you see that? And then twirling,
yeah,
it was always
none of
making
them
it
were
as
growing off up into the air or to the
Not
side.
at all.
They knew that down was down.
They knew that down was down. They grew that way almost to repel the shape away from it. So you can look at some of the properties of it, grew it, and then as it would get off balance, it would rotate. But I did notice, I noticed the vector of energy on them growing. They always grew the same as we see rain or anything else. And that 90-degree vector to the dielectric inertial plane, your little lines were growing. Your pillars were growing. They arranged themselves that way. That to me is, again, pillar. It's an arrangement. It's an arrangement of, again, a vector, an arrangement.
Yeah.
Makes me want to see crystals, how they grow in relationship to an electromagnetic current. And so if I were to do a horizontal current, is that going to cause the crystal to grow in a different way?
Probably it could. You probably could reorientate, just like Zach doing and changing ground or doing things like that. I wonder if you could. I mean, it's not going to change the recipe, but you could possibly change which direction they see as down. I think that you probably could overcome that. It's a very weak force. I mean, it's a very weak force you're overcoming in a way there. You're still dealing with atmospheric pressure and things like that you might have to like work for outside of it. I mean, then you're getting into vacuums. You have a lot of variables on it, Kyle.
Some people were asking about, they must have joined in a little bit. We were showing this video earlier. This is just salt water turning into a crystal as all the water evaporates out of it. And these little spikes right here, you'll see they grow out of the bottom. And even when it starts tipping over, it'll keep growing out of the bottom. When they fall over, it'll start again. You'll see it. There'll be a really good one right here coming up. And you can actually see the water flowing through the little tubes that they're creating.
So if I change the current direction, will it go to the side instead of straight down?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, we need to get a Van de Graaff generator on this.
I have the Wimhurst now. It's even stronger.
Or
yeah.
The Gaussian surfaces.
And it says that
this is microscopic, right?
Yeah, we'd have to really zoom in on it, it looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, they always grow, look at almost 90 degrees perpendicular. They're always growing straight down.
Very
I think this
interesting.
is the one where when it'll tip over and then you see it start, even on the one of the legs out here as it tips, it'll start growing. It tips and starts growing straight up again. Yeah, look at even from over here, it's straight from the bottom right there. Just weird. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think on that one.
That is interesting, and especially if you think about how salt, like you can make like a saltwater battery, right? But you have to have salt water to do it. If you don't have salt in the water, it won't work, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if there's a way to reverse the process, and so all those pillars go straight up instead. Like, how big will they get?
Yeah, I might have to play around again. I have to get the plates out. See if I can grow some of these pillars in the opposite direction.
But yeah, what else can we talk about with crystal basics?
Well, somebody in the chat wanted to know if, let me see if I can get that on there, wanting to know if selenite could just be halite salt. I believe is what do they write on it? And it's like, no, because they grow in different crystal structures, and that is the whole thing is when you look at the different, any of the minerals, one of the things that we do have on like all the minerals, and this is how we name one from the other is again what axis they grow at, what their property is, what their hardness is, can they conduct electricity, can they conduct magnetics, any property you can think of. Do they cleave at planes? Do they how do they affect the optics? Each one makes it very special. We analyze each one. It even has a polarity to it. Is it singly or double refractive? So you things that look alike, like salt or selenite or whatever, are not. That's again by testing their properties. It's their properties that distinguish them, not what they look like, but their actual physical properties that we can turn around and work with again in technology and reuse. Again, all of the everything was built into the crystals and the minerals itself. We just unlock it.
Well said.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, all right. I think we're going to wrap it up. That's about an hour of crystal talk there. We don't want to, overblow your minds too much.
This
I
is an
learned quite a bit
introduction.
just kind of looking through some videos. The salt mines really blew my mind. I knew there were salt mines. I knew they were huge, but I didn't know they were so vast and all over the plain, just about everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I really hoped we were going to get into how the light and color of each crystal could unlock our true potential and let us see through the simulation that we're living in.
I love it.
Well, you can meditate with different crystals, and sometimes it can help you in your meditation.
I suggest rose-colored glasses for that one, Skylar.
Well, all right. So, Karen, what do you got coming up this week?
Well, let's see, what's today, Thursday? Well, Saturday I've got anti-religious scripture study, and Monday coffee talk, Tuesday Strange World as usual. That's about it.
Awesome sauce. Yeah, I'm usually at all those except for Strange World because it's so late for me.
Yeah, it's late for me.
Oh, I know. Especially when I see you in the chat Tuesday morning at like 5:30, it's like, oh my gosh, Karen's gonna have a long day.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. So, Kyle, what do you got going on this week, man?
I've still been doing a ton of study on the flattered city of Zion, Illinois, and I just keep finding all kinds of stuff about it, and it's just mind-blowing, really. And so I'm going to get more into that, and it's, yeah, looking forward to it.
All right. Cami, what do you got going on?
Oh, let's see. We have, well, you have the GlobeBusters show on Sunday. I have this show next week, and we have Iron Rail Media on Friday night. And I have a lot more rock hunting and that to do in the backyard. And we have a lot further to go on this topic. This is just an intro, but I can tell already, I'm looking in the chat and I'm smiling. Crystals can grow faster in their ideal conditions. It takes far less than millions or thousands or even hundreds of years. Solo Cat, I love you. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Reality.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And Skylar, the Troubling Tribune channel. Man, you have been busy lately. You're also
Doing
another
great
one of
work,
those
by the way.
night
I love
owls,
it.
so I have to catch up on you later on after the show's over because you're always so, well, not so late, I shouldn't say.
No worries. Everybody catches it when they can. There's plenty of real estate out there when it comes to stuff to watch. So, I'm not greedy with the views, but I definitely appreciate everybody who does take the time to come out and join us live. It is a lot of fun, very active, energetic environment. And you guys are not going to believe this. This Friday, we're doing another True Earth debate on TikTok. How exciting is that? So
Awesome
we hope
sauce.
to dig through the dredges and find some intelligent life. We shall see. Possibly even some new globe Earth arguments to tackle. That's really what we're on the hunt for, if you want me to be completely honest. But that and just some good conversation. So I hope that you guys will join us, as well as join in supporting my efforts to go to Flattoberfest so I can meet all of you lovely ladies and gentlemen who will be out there as well. So we have a GoFundMe set up, and it is doing really well. So huge shout out to all the legends who have contributed to that. Thank you.
Yeah, you should drop that in the chat.
Please, can you drop that in the chat? Can we drop that in the show link? I know I've contributed on behalf of this. I would love to meet Skylar in person. He is, again, going out and doing so many things, and it would be really, really, I think, a good thing to bring him out to meet everybody in Vegas. And I know my trip would be better meeting you.
Absolutely. Well, if you haven't heard, the trip we're talking about is to Vegas, baby. Flattoberfest 2023, Saturday and Sunday, October 21st and 22nd at Sam's Town Hotel and Gambling Hall. It's going to be awesome. The event is there. There's a lot of people staying in the hotel. It's not right on the strip, so you're not going to be, mobbed when you walk out of the place and overwhelmed. It's not too far off the strip, though, as well. Just a short ride away. But yeah, I don't plan on leaving the building once I get in there until I'm heading to the hotel. There's going to be hundreds of people there that I'm going to want to talk to. And a weekend usually isn't enough time. We're usually always saying that we need a whole week. But we're all pretty tired by the end of that first weekend. So a week would probably kill us. Yeah.
I can't stay a whole week, but I will be there from like Thursday to Monday.
And there will be Mark Sargent, Mark Devlin, Jaronism, Dave Murphy, Ben Balderson, Jason Lingren, Dirth, DITRH. That's David Weiss.
Yeah, I still haven't updated my website yet, but also Amanda Vollmer.
Oh, nice. Amanda Vollmer will be there. Chief Crow coming?
Yes,
Awesome.
Chief Crow's coming. I was messaging with him earlier today. Yes, Chief Crow. We're also going to have a sound bath.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. As
that
usual.
I'm excited for a lot.
I know, me too. Me too.
So yeah, I hope to see you all there. I can't wait. Yeah, this will be the first one Cami and I are going to go to, and we're not doing How the Worlds Work, so I'm going to get to actually hang out with everybody. I'm sure we'll be helping out Karen B any way we possibly can, for sure. If there's anything that needs to be done, we're always up for that. But yeah, it's going to be neat being away from the table and just being able to hang out with everybody and talk. It's yeah, but don't be afraid to ask questions either, because I love that stuff too.
Absolutely. Well, that's what it's all about. That's the whole weekend is just about talking, having those discussions, having those with everybody that you ever wanted to talk to.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of them there, so I can't wait. Well, alrighty, folks, thank you so much for joining us. This was another GlobeBusters Tech episode. Remember, be good to each other. Be kind. Open your mind because there's truth inside. Peace out.
Peace.
Peace.